The lecture hall goes silent as Professor Kessler slams Malik's quiz onto the desk, graded harshly, publicly. He didn't even show his work. The professor scoffs, ignoring that Malik's answer was perfect. Laughter ripples through the class. Malik stares forward, eyes unblinking, recording every second. But what no one knows, he's building a digital case to bring this entire institution to its knees. And in 72 hours, one encrypted file will turn the entire university upside down. Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel and tell us where are you watching from. Share in the comments below. The morning sun glinted off the neoclassical columns of Pennington Hall, casting long shadows across the courtyard where Malik Henderson stood alone. His Nikes were spotless, his hoodie pulled just enough over his head to feel like armor. He had rehearsed this moment in his mind all summer, walking into his first college class, invisible and prepared. But standing here, at the heart of a campus that whispered legacy through every brick, he felt the weight of centuries not meant for him. Malik was one of the only black students in his cohort of honors STEM scholars, and the only one in the advanced calculus seminar, led by the infamous Professor Warren Kessler. Kessler was legendary in the department. His lectures sharp, his grading sharper. He was the kind of professor who believed rigor built character, and who measured students' worth by how well they handled humiliation in public. As Malik pushed open the lecture hall door, the temperature seemed to drop. Students turned subtly, not rudely, just long enough for their glances to register. The room was massive, tiered like a Roman Colosseum. Over 200 seats faced a single raised platform, where Kessler stood already scribbling equations on the board. Back turned, Malik picked a seat, near the middle, not too close to seem eager, not too far to seem disengaged. His silence, carefully curated, was meant to keep him safe. He took out his notebook and opened to a fresh page, glancing up as Kessler finally turned around. The professor was tall, with a chiseled jaw and white hair cropped military style. His eyes scanned the room like a searchlight, stopping when they hit Malik, just for a second. Long enough. Kessler's voice cut through the murmurs. Let's not pretend this will be easy. If you're looking for hand-holding, you're in the wrong department. The class chuckled nervously. Malik didn't. The lecture launched into high gear immediately. Derivatives, limits, epsilon delta definitions. Kessler didn't slow down. He moved like a man with something to prove. Like every second wasted was a personal offense. Students typed furiously, or scribbled notes. Malik worked in silence, eyes focused, hands steady, but he felt it. That spotlight. Every time Kessler paced past his row, his footsteps slowed. Every rhetorical question seemed to angle in his direction. By week 2, the subtlety began to curdle. Kessler would call on students randomly. Except it wasn't random. Malik noticed the pattern. The soft-spoken white girl in the front row always got softball questions. The frat boy who answered confidently but wrong still got nods of approval. Malik, though, every time he was asked something, it was phrased like a trap. Mr. Henderson, care to enlighten us on how you derived that limit? Even when he answered correctly, Kessler found a way to spin it. Interesting method. Not one I'd recommend. The class laughed again. This time, Malik didn't look up. He'd started recording audio on his phone, keeping notes after every session. He was learning the material fast, but learning the professor even faster. Outside the lecture hall, no one said anything. No "hey, that was messed up," or "you handled that well." Just glances and silence. The kind of silence that grew in well-trimmed hedges and alumni-funded endowments. The kind of silence that pretended to be polite, but always protected power. Malik walked with it, ate with it, slept under it. He didn't call home much. His mother would hear it in his voice, the quiet frustration, the tight-lipped exhaustion. Instead, he dove into the work. Math was logical. Math didn't lie. But Kessler was not math. Week 3 brought the first quiz. The lecture hall buzzed with anxiety as Kessler handed out the sheets. No calculators, no multiple choice, just 4 brutal problems, and a clock ticking louder than it should have. Malik worked methodically. He knew he was right. Every answer checked, every step justified. But he didn't rush. He double-checked everything twice, then slid the paper onto the edge of his desk with 2 minutes to spare. Kessler walked the aisles as students turned in their quizzes. When he reached Malik's row, he paused, picked up Malik's paper slowly, like it might burn him. He scanned it right there, in front of everyone. A smirk crept across his face. Interesting, Kessler muttered, voice just loud enough to carry. Mr. Henderson seems to think calculus is optional when it comes to structure. Heads turned. Malik sat still. Kessler held up the page. This, he said, pointing to Malik's clean, legible work, is what happens when students rely on intuition over precision. See this mistake? Right here. A common one. It's what I'd expect from someone trying to pass without doing the hard work. The room fell silent. No one laughed this time. Malik didn't flinch, didn't speak, but something in his chest cracked. He reached slowly into his bag and turned off the hidden voice recorder. Kessler tossed the paper onto the podium like trash. Let that be a lesson, he said, eyes locked on Malik. Even smart-looking answers can be wrong when they come from the wrong assumptions. The class stared, some confused, some horrified, a few entertained. Malik blinked slowly, swallowed the heat in his throat. He said nothing. Still, but inside, something shifted. As students shuffled out quietly, Malik remained seated. Kessler stood alone at the podium, reorganizing papers. Then, without looking up, he muttered just loud enough for Malik to hear. You won't last long here. Malik met his gaze for the first time, and smiled. Not with his mouth, with his eyes. It was the kind of smile that said, watch me. The morning after the quiz, Malik walked toward Pennington Hall with a strange stillness in his chest. The courtyard was alive with chatter. Students in faded hoodies, balancing coffee cups, gossiping about the tests. He caught fragments of conversation as he passed. That quiz was murder. He's brutal this semester. Kessler's on some kind of power trip. But when Malik entered the lecture hall, the air shifted again. The murmur of voices lowered like an instinct. He could feel it. Something unspoken waiting for him. Kessler stood at the front of the room, leaning against the podium, a stack of graded papers in his hand. Good morning, everyone, he said, voice smooth, commanding. I took the liberty of grading your quizzes myself. The results were enlightening. He smiled, but it wasn't kind. The room fell silent. Malik sat near the middle, same spot as always, notebook open, pen poised, heart pacing quietly behind his ribs. He had spent the weekend replaying the quiz in his mind, checking every step he'd written. He knew his answers were right, at least 90% of them. Kessler continued. Some of you demonstrated excellence, he said, lifting a few papers. Others revealed what happens when students think they can coast on potential rather than discipline. He began calling names, handing back papers one by one. Some students smiled in relief. Others groaned. Malik waited. When his name wasn't called, his pulse sharpened. Finally, Kessler stopped. Ah yes, Mr. Henderson. He held up a paper, Malik's paper, between two fingers like something fragile. Let's discuss a learning opportunity. The room tensed. Malik could hear the faint rustle of notebooks being set aside. Kessler walked slowly toward the center aisle, his shoes clicking with precision. He didn't hand Malik his quiz. Instead, he faced the class. Mr. Henderson attempted a problem that required implicit differentiation, he said, eyes glinting. But instead of applying the chain rule properly, he made what I like to call a creative leap. A few students chuckled nervously. Malik stared down at his notebook. Kessler read the equation aloud, exaggerating every flaw as though narrating a comedy. See, he skipped this crucial derivative step here, likely assuming it didn't matter. This kind of oversight is exactly what separates those who think they belong here from those who actually do. The class's laughter grew louder this time, less hesitant. Malik's ears burned. He didn't look up. The page in front of him blurred. Kessler continued, relentless. Now, Mr. Henderson, you seem like a bright young man. I'm sure your high school teachers thought you were gifted. But this isn't high school anymore. Talent without structure is just noise. Every word hit like a slow, deliberate push, the kind that didn't bruise skin, but stained memory. Malik wanted to say something to point out that his work was correct, that maybe the professor's reading was wrong, but he didn't. His silence wasn't fear, it was calculation. He had learned long ago that sometimes silence screamed louder than any defense. When Kessler finally finished, he placed the quiz face down on Malik's desk. The red ink bled across the top in bold letters. A low hum of whispers filled the room. Malik's throat tightened, but his face stayed still. Kessler turned back toward the whiteboard, satisfied. Let that be a reminder, he said. Precision matters, effort matters, and above all, humility matters. Humility. The word hung there, dripping with hypocrisy. Malik watched Kessler's shoulders as he resumed the lecture, drawing complex equations with clean, confident strokes. It was almost beautiful, the way he wielded control like a conductor with his orchestra. The rest of the class blurred into noise. Malik copied the notes mechanically, pretending to listen, pretending he wasn't the centerpiece of a carefully crafted lesson in hierarchy. When the lecture ended, students gathered in quiet clusters. Some avoided looking at him. Others gave him that pitying half-smile. The kind that said, "I'm glad it wasn't me." The one black teaching assistant, Elijah, lingered near the front but didn't approach. He looked conflicted, eyes flicking between Malik and Kessler before finally leaving the room. Malik stayed behind, waiting until the hall emptied. He picked up his quiz again, scanning the red markings. The professor had circled correct steps and labeled them incomplete. In one problem, Malik had even written an alternate proof, the kind of thing professors usually praise for originality. Instead, Kessler had written, "Overcomplication suggests misunderstanding." It wasn't feedback. It was branding. Malik slid the paper into his folder, zipped his backpack, and stood up. His movements were slow, deliberate. The silence felt different now, not protective, but suffocating. As he walked out of the hall, two students whispered near the doorway. "Who was that kid?" Kessler called out. "Some new guy, I think. Henderson something." "Yeah, he's in the honors program, right?" "Surprising." Maybe they lowered the bar. The words weren't meant to be loud, but Malik heard every syllable. He walked past them, expression blank. Inside, the heat crawled up his spine. That night, in his dorm room, Malik sat at his desk surrounded by textbooks and empty coffee cups. The hum of campus life drifted through the window. Music, laughter, freedom. But in his small circle of lamplight, he replayed Kessler's voice over and over. He opened his laptop and logged into the university's online portal. Grades for the quiz had just been posted. He found his name, scrolled across the row, and froze. Score. That wasn't possible. His calculations were correct. Even by Kessler's twisted standards, it should have been at least a... He clicked the assignment details. The rubric was vague, inconsistently applied. Then something else caught his eye. The submission timestamp. It was marked 5 minutes late. He knew he had turned it in on time. He'd handed it to Kessler directly. A chill ran through him. Was this a mistake or something else? He checked his email, half expecting a message from Kessler, explaining the deduction. Nothing. Instead, an automated notice appeared. Academic performance warning issued for low assessment grade. Malik leaned back, staring at the screen. His reflection looked foreign, eyes dark with quiet disbelief. He opened the file where he'd started keeping notes about every interaction with Kessler. It had been meant as study review material. Now it looked more like a record. He typed, "September 1st quiz returned. Publicly humiliated. Incorrect grade recorded. Timestamp altered." He hit save. Outside, thunder rumbled faintly across the southern sky. The air felt heavy, expectant. Malik didn't know it yet, but this was the first entry in what would become a full dossier, a quiet rebellion taking shape in secret. He closed his laptop and turned off the lamp, lying back on his narrow dorm bed. But his mind wouldn't rest. It replayed the laughter, the way Kessler's voice had echoed through the hall, the way his classmates' eyes had avoided his. The power imbalance wasn't just in grades. It was in the way the world had already chosen sides before he even spoke. Still, somewhere beneath the sting, something steadier began to rise. Not anger, not revenge, just resolve. Malik reopened his laptop one last time to check the portal again, and blinked. His grade had changed from 42% to 27%. The flickering light from Malik's laptop screen painted soft blue shadows across his dorm walls. It was 2:13 a.m., and the glow of the digital gradebook reflected in his tired eyes. The number 27% stared back like an accusation. He had checked it 4 times already, hoping the system would correct itself, that maybe it was a glitch. But deep down he knew, it wasn't a mistake, it was a message. The cursor blinked beside his name as if mocking him. He clicked on View Feedback. Lines of red text appeared. Each answer dissected not for correctness, but for format. Improper notation. Unclear variable labeling. Inconsistent formatting. He scrolled faster, pulse rising. He had followed every rule Kessler had given in class, except there hadn't been any rule about formatting. Malik reached for his notebook, flipping through the pages of neat, consistent handwriting. His process was clean, logical, step by step. But Kessler's red markings didn't care about accuracy. They were surgical, designed to cut confidence, not correct mistakes. He took a breath, opened a new email draft, and began to type. Dear Professor Kessler, I've reviewed my quiz results and noticed several points were deducted for formatting issues not outlined in the syllabus or during lectures. Could we please schedule a time to review this together? He read it 3 times, ensuring every word sounded polite, deferential. He hit send. The reply came 20 minutes later. At 2:40, office hours are for students who actually try. That was it. No greeting, no punctuation beyond a period. Just 7 words that burned hotter than any insult. Malik stared at the email, motionless. His heart sank, not from shock, but recognition. It wasn't the first time someone had mistaken his composure for laziness, his quiet for indifference. He'd spent years walking the thin line between not wanting to be too loud and refusing to disappear. But this was different. This was institutional. He started documenting. A new folder appeared on his desktop. Kessler Documentation. Inside, he created subfolders, emails, grades, recordings, notes. He saved screenshots of every correspondence, timestamps intact, every graded paper he photographed under good lighting, each red circle and comment meticulously archived. Over the following week, the pattern became unmistakable. In every returned assignment, the same discrepancies appeared. White students made small arithmetic errors and lost 1 point. Malik lost 5 for presentation. Others were told, good effort. His feedback read, unacceptable standard. At first, he tried to rationalize it. Maybe Kessler was just strict. Maybe he was being too sensitive. But the weight of coincidence soon collapsed under the clarity of evidence. It wasn't random. It was strategy. The more Malik studied Kessler's behavior, the clearer the system became. The professor never shouted, never said anything explicitly racist. His weapon was subtler, a bureaucratic scalpel disguised as professionalism. He manipulated grading criteria, reshaped expectations, and used policy as armor. Every decision looked justified on paper, but in practice, it bled bias. By midweek, Malik's inbox had filled with automated academic warnings. His GPA projection dipped. Scholarships relied on maintaining a high-grade average. A single D could jeopardize his financial aid. That was the real design. The email from the financial aid office arrived on Thursday morning. Dear Mr. Henderson, we've noticed a significant drop in your academic performance. Continued low performance may affect your scholarship eligibility. Please contact your advisor to discuss intervention resources. The irony stung. An intervention for something he hadn't caused. Malik printed the email, adding it to his growing folder. That afternoon, he decided to visit Kessler's office. The hallway leading there was quiet, sterile, lined with framed certificates and awards. Excellence in teaching. Distinguished scholar. His name was everywhere. Malik knocked. Come in, Kessler's voice called. The office was immaculate. Books arranged by color. Diplomas centered perfectly behind his desk. Kessler didn't look up from his papers. Professor Kessler, Malik began softly. I wanted to ask about my quiz grade. I've reviewed the rubric. Kessler finally looked up, leaning back in his chair. His smile was thin. Mr. Henderson, correct?
Yes, sir.
I assume this is about your grade. Yes, sir. I noticed deductions for formatting errors that weren't specified and Kessler raised a hand. Stop there. You're missing the point of this program. We're preparing future mathematicians, not complainers. Malik blinked. I'm not complaining, sir. I just wanted to understand. You want to understand? Kessler's tone sharpened, the polite mask slipping for a split second. Understanding comes from rigor, not from excuses. You're smart, I can see that, but you seem to believe that potential gives you privileges. It doesn't. Malik stood silent, pulse steady. Kessler continued, voice low and deliberate. The world won't lower standards for you, Mr. Henderson. The sooner you learn that, the better you'll fare. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Malik nodded once, controlling his breath. Thank you for your time, Professor. He left before the silence could answer. Back in his dorm, Malik replayed the moment in his head. The tone, the phrasing, the look. The message wasn't about grading. It was about hierarchy. He wasn't being evaluated. He was being reminded. That night, Malik started something new. He created a spreadsheet, columns for every quiz, every email, every inconsistency. He noted grading patterns among other students using group forums. Anonymous posts confirmed his suspicions. Kessler's grading is all over the place. He's harder on some of us. Feels like bias. But no one wanted to say it aloud. The deeper Malik went, the more invisible lines he uncovered. Bias so systemic it disguised itself as excellence. It wasn't just Kessler. It was the system that protected him, rewarded him, promoted him. The university prided itself on diversity brochures and glossy inclusion campaigns, while quietly ensuring people like Malik stayed contained within their boundaries of tolerance. Late one evening, as Malik compiled his findings, a notification popped on his screen. New message from E.S. a university. It was Elijah Thomas, the black teaching assistant who had been silent that day in class. Malik, I know this might be weird, but I've been following what's happening. Don't respond here. It's not safe. Can we meet somewhere off campus? I'll explain everything. Malik read the message twice. The phrasing was cautious. Not safe. He minimized the window, staring into the darkness outside his dorm window. The campus glowed gold under streetlights, calm and untouched. Yet beneath that calmness, he felt something shifting, a tension forming under the surface, something bigger than grades. He took out his phone and snapped one last photo of Kessler's email. Office hours are for students who actually try. He added it to the folder. His archive was growing like a silent weapon. One piece at a time. Malik leaned back, eyes still on the message from Elijah. The cursor blinked next to the unsent reply. He hesitated, then began to type. When and where? He hit send. 10 minutes later, Elijah replied with a single line. Tonight. Midnight. Back entrance of the old library. Don't tell anyone. The old library stood at the far edge of campus, a relic from another century. Its tall windows glowed faintly from the inside, dust particles drifting through the air like forgotten memories. At midnight, the building was almost beautiful, quiet, abandoned, and too still for comfort. Malik stood in the shadow of the entrance, hood drawn low, his breath visible in the cool night air. He had replayed Elijah's message in his head a dozen times. Tonight, midnight, back entrance of the old library. Don't tell anyone. It felt like something out of a spy movie, only this wasn't fiction. This was survival. He checked his phone. 12:04 a.m. No sign of Elijah. Just when he began to wonder if this was some kind of setup, the door creaked open. A beam of light cut through the dark, then disappeared as quickly as it came. Malik? A low voice whispered. It was Elijah. He motioned him inside. Malik followed, the heavy door closing behind them with a hollow echo. Inside, the library was dim, lit only by the faint glow of a desk lamp near the back. Rows of books towered above them, casting long shadows that swayed with every movement. Elijah sat at a wooden table already covered in folders, notes in a half-empty coffee cup. His expression was cautious, his eyes darting toward the door before settling on Malik. I'm sorry for how that class went down. He began. You didn't deserve that. Malik crossed his arms. Then why didn't you say anything? Elijah exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. Because speaking up in that room means career suicide. Kessler has pull, real pull. People who cross him don't just lose jobs, they lose futures. Malik studied him, the quiet intensity in his eyes betraying frustration more than anger. So that's it? Everyone just lets him do it? Elijah shook his head slowly. Not everyone. Some of us, we talk. We share warnings. But there's no paper trail. He's too smart for that. He slid a thin folder across the table. Malik hesitated, then opened it. Inside were printouts, anonymous student reviews, fragments of emails, notes scribbled in margins. Phrases jumped out like whispers in the dark. Targeted again. Dropped the class. No one believed me. He said I wasn't analytical enough. Malik's stomach turned. These are all black students. Elijah finished quietly. Every one of them. Different years, different majors. Same story. Malik flipped through the pages. None of it was official, but it didn't need to be. The pattern was too precise to be coincidence. Elijah leaned forward, voice barely above a whisper. He knows how to play the system. He doesn't call anyone names, never writes anything offensive. He just manipulates the grading criteria. Changes expectations mid-semester. Favors students who look like him. It's not overt racism. It's surgical. Malik's hands tightened around the folder. The silence between them grew heavy. Elijah's tone softened. You're not the first to think you can outwork him. You're probably the best student he's ever had. But he'll never let you win. He'll call you arrogant, uncoachable, too emotional. That's his playbook. Once he labels you, you're done. Malik sat back, his mind spinning. He remembered every snide comment, every time Kessler had smirked when he spoke. He remembered that one line that clung to his memory. The world won't lower standards for you. He hadn't realized until now how much of that world Kessler controlled within these walls. Why are you helping me? Malik finally asked. Elijah hesitated before answering. Because I was you. 2 years ago. Different class. Same story. I thought I could fix it by proving myself. I ended up losing my scholarship. Had to switch to a part-time position just to stay enrolled. Malik's eyes widened. Kessler did that? He never touched a grade, Elijah said bitterly. He just suggested I might not be cut out for theoretical mathematics. My advisor suddenly agreed. It happens quietly. Like erosion. The words hit Malik harder than any insult could. Erosion. That's what this was. Slow, deliberate erasure. A kind of violence that didn't leave bruises, only absence. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The air smelled faintly of dust and paper, the kind of scent that lingered in old institutions. Timeless, unchanging. Finally, Malik broke the silence. So what now? You want me to drop the class? Elijah looked at him with a mixture of fear and admiration. If you stay, you need to know what you're walking into. They'll twist everything. If you challenge him, you'll be the problem. If you stay quiet, you'll fade out. Either way, he wins. Malik leaned forward. Then how do I make him lose? Elijah blinked, surprised by the calm in Malik's voice. You don't fight him head on, he said. You document everything. You collect enough truth that when he tries to bury you, he ends up burying himself. Malik nodded slowly. Already started. That made Elijah pause. Started? Malik opened his backpack and pulled out a USB drive. Every quiz, every email, every grade discrepancy. I've been recording lectures too. Elijah stared at him, astonished. You've been recording? Audio, Malik clarified. Just the lectures. His tone. The things he says. Elijah let out a low whistle. Half impressed, half afraid. You realize that's dangerous, right? If the wrong person finds out. I'm not planning to share it, Malik said. Not yet. But if this keeps going, I'll have proof. Elijah looked at him differently now. Less like a student, more like a peer. There was something unshakable in Malik's composure, something that felt older than 19. I'll help you, Elijah said finally. But you need to be careful. This place protects its image more than its students, especially ones like us. Malik nodded, tucking the folder back into his bag. His heartbeat was steady now, focused. I just want the truth on record. That's all. They sat in silence for a moment, the only sound the faint creak of the old building settling. Elijah's voice was barely audible when he spoke again. There's something else you should know. Last year, a girl named Simone Carter tried to file a complaint. Kessler failed her out of spite. She appealed, but the university sided with him. She transferred after that. Malik frowned. Where is she now? California, Elijah said. Engineering program. She won't talk about it anymore. Malik absorbed that. Another casualty, another story no one would remember. He stood, slinging his backpack over his shoulder. I'm not going anywhere. Elijah's brow furrowed. You're staying in his class? Yeah, Malik said, calm but resolute. If I drop, I lose. He gets what he wants. But if I stay, I can show the pattern. Maybe even end it. Elijah looked at him, a flicker of something like pride crossing his face. You're either brave or crazy. Malik smiled faintly. Maybe both. They left the library quietly. The campus was silent again, the lamplight stretching long shadows across the walkway. Malik's footsteps were slow but certain, each one heavier than the last. He felt something new burning in his chest. Not anger but purpose. He reached his dorm just before 1 a.m. and placed the folder under his mattress, next to the growing pile of evidence. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the wall. Kessler had turned grading into warfare, but Malik was learning the terrain. Every bias, every slight, every manipulation, he would map it, piece by piece. He thought of Elijah's warning, words echoing like prophecy. They'll call you lazy, emotional, angry, before they admit you're brilliant. Malik lay back, staring at the ceiling. The silence felt different now. Not suffocating, but strategic. He wasn't retreating. He was positioning. As he drifted into uneasy sleep, his phone buzzed. A new email notification appeared on the lock screen. From Professor Warren Kessler. The subject line read, "We need to talk about your behavior." The email sat in Malik's inbox like a loaded weapon. Subject, "We need to talk about your behavior." He had stared at it for almost a full minute, reading the line again and again, feeling the temperature in his room drop. The timing was no coincidence. Not after his meeting with Elijah. Kessler's message wasn't just a reprimand. It was a warning shot. Malik clicked it open. "Mr. Henderson, I've noticed a pattern of defiance and disengagement in your recent classes. Please schedule a meeting with me immediately to discuss your attitude and participation." Professor Kessler. He almost laughed. Defiance and disengagement. The man had twisted silence into rebellion. Malik closed the email, without replying, and leaned back in his chair. He wasn't going to give Kessler what he wanted. Fear, apology, submission. That night marked a shift, the quiet kind of shift that doesn't announce itself, but rewires everything underneath. He started staying up late, pushing deeper into the world of calculus than Kessler ever could have expected. Every theorem, every proof, every limit, Malik studied them like language itself. 6 hours a night, every night. He memorized the methods Kessler used, the phrases he repeated, even the small errors he sometimes made on the board, and never corrected.
Malik didn't just want to pass the class. He wanted to dismantle it from within.
He watched online lectures from other universities, comparing Kessler's explanations to those of top professors. Slowly, he began to notice the gaps, the moments when Kessler oversimplified, when he cut corners, when he discouraged questions that could expose his own inconsistency. Malik started annotating everything. He recorded the online grade portal, taking screenshots every time scores were posted. He backed up emails on an external drive. Then one night, he began recording the lectures themselves, discreetly, with a small camera clipped under his hoodie string, the lens facing forward. At first it was just for protection, but soon it became something else. Evidence. The recordings captured not only Kessler's lectures, but the tone, the phrasing, the microaggressions, disguised as constructive criticism. The jokes that always cut one way. The long silences that followed when Malik raised a hand. He edited them together quietly. Timestamp by timestamp, pattern by pattern. It wasn't anger driving him anymore. It was precision. The same precision Kessler claimed to value. By midterm, something extraordinary happened. Malik began to outperform everyone in the class. He knew the material inside and out. His work was flawless, methodical, elegant. He even started tutoring classmates after hours. Some of the very students who had laughed at him before. One night, in the library, a girl named Jessica, one of the top students, approached him. "Hey," she said awkwardly, clutching her notebook. "So, I heard you're good at explaining Kessler's examples. Mine don't make sense sometimes." Malik gave a small smile. "Sure. Sit down." As he walked her through the problem, she frowned. "Wait, he taught it differently. Your way actually works better." He shrugged lightly. Maybe he missed a step. Jessica hesitated. "You think he's grading you unfairly?" Malik's pencil stopped midair. He looked at her, not angry, just curious. "Why would you ask that?" She looked embarrassed. "Because your answers are always better than mine, but my grades are higher. It doesn't make sense." Her voice trailed off, and the silence between them said everything. She didn't mean harm. She just didn't know how to name it. Malik simply nodded. "Yeah, it doesn't make sense." After she left, he added another note to his growing file. "Peer grades inconsistent with mine. Student confirms discrepancy."
Weeks turned into months. Malik's digital archive grew massive. Gigabytes of footage, files, notes. He even learned how to encrypt them, storing backups in cloud folders under coded names. Every night felt like an operation. Every assignment was evident.
And yet, despite acing every exam, his grades stayed maddeningly average. B, C con, once even a D, though every answer was correct. When he brought it up, Kessler replied with mechanical politeness. Grades reflect performance holistically, not just accuracy. Holistically, another word weaponized into control. But Malik didn't argue. He didn't need to. He was already building something much stronger than outrage: credibility. By early November, tension filled every class. Students whispered about inconsistencies. A few had started noticing the patterns Elijah warned him about. Kessler grew more impatient, his tone sharper. He sensed something shifting, authority slipping, ever so slightly. During one lecture, Malik sat near the front, quietly recording as usual. Kessler paced, marker in hand, explaining an optimization problem. Now for those struggling to grasp this, he said, glancing toward Malik. Try to visualize it like something simpler, say the slope of your academic future. A ripple of uneasy laughter moved through the room. Malik didn't move. He just wrote, methodically. The camera on his hoodie blinked red, unseen. Kessler leaned on the podium, voice dipping lower. Some of you, I fear, are here because of opportunities rather than aptitude. I won't say who, but the results are already clear. The words hit like a slap disguised as a lecture. Malik's pencil paused. He looked up, meeting Kessler's eyes. Neither blinked. The class went silent. Then Malik said calmly, could you clarify what you mean by opportunities? Kessler smiled thinly. Scholarships, quotas, institutional generosity. Surely you understand what I'm referring to. A murmur rippled through the students. Some shifted uncomfortably. Others pretended to take notes. Malik leaned back, his tone steady. So you're saying some of us didn't earn our place here? Kessler's smile froze. I'm saying some of you still have to prove it. Malik nodded once, eyes never leaving him. Then I guess I'll see you at the top of the curve, Professor. Gasps rippled through the lecture hall. Kessler's jaw tightened, a flicker of real anger breaking through his practiced calm. When class ended, Malik packed his things without hurry. He could feel the eyes on him. Curiosity, admiration, fear. As he walked out, he passed Kessler at the podium. Their shoulders almost brushed. Kessler said quietly, "You're getting bold, Mr. Henderson." Malik stopped, turned slightly. "No, sir. Just accurate." He left before Kessler could reply. That night, Malik watched the recording of the entire exchange. Every word captured, every pause heavy with subtext. He clipped the footage, time-stamped it, and stored it in a separate folder, Evidence 3A, Public Statement. It was the most powerful moment yet. Proof not just of bias but of the arrogance that fueled it. The following week, Kessler seemed restless. He called on Malik constantly, each question more pointed, more personal. Malik answered them all, flawlessly. Every correct answer only deepened the tension. Then during one particularly intense lecture, it happened. Kessler was writing on the board when he suddenly stopped mid-equation. He turned sharply, eyes locking on Malik. "Mr. Henderson," he said, voice low but cutting. "What's that on your desk?" The room froze. Malik's pulse spiked. His pen rested beside his notebook, and the small black device clipped to his hoodie string blinked once. Kessler took a step closer. "Is that a recording?" Malik didn't answer. He didn't move. Kessler's voice rose, breaking the fragile calm. "Are you recording my lecture without permission?" Gasps erupted. Students exchanged glances. Phones appeared, ready to capture the drama. Malik opened his mouth, but Kessler cut him off, his composure cracking for the first time. "This is a violation of academic policy," he shouted. "You're done here, Mr. Henderson. Do you understand me?" The lecture hall erupted into whispers. Malik sat perfectly still, the camera still rolling, capturing every word, every glare, every ounce of manufactured outrage. Kessler slammed his marker on the podium. "I'm filing a misconduct report, effective immediately." But as Malik slowly reached for his laptop, a quiet smile spread across his face, because he knew something Kessler didn't. The recording wasn't just of that lecture. It was live streaming. Malik stood just outside the Office of Academic Affairs, heart pounding beneath his jacket. The hallway smelled like stale air and disinfectant. Cold, clean, the kind of place where voices were lowered and decisions were final. A gold plaque mounted beside the heavy wooden door read, "Academic Integrity Review Board." Inside that room, a group of administrators and faculty members waited to decide his fate, most of whom didn't know his name yesterday. The charge violation of academic policy. Professor Kessler's official complaint had come in just hours after their confrontation. Unauthorized recording during lecture. It read, followed by "Student has demonstrated a pattern of disruptive behavior, antagonistic conduct, and disrespectful engagement, unbecoming of a university scholar." Malik read the words over and over. Each one was calculated, cold, clinical, and devastating. Not because they were true, but because they were believable. He clutched the flash drive in his pocket, knuckles whitening. It held every file, every video, every time-stamped note from the last 2 months. He wasn't walking into a hearing, he was walking into a war, and he was walking in alone. The door creaked open. A woman with a clipboard poked her head out. "Mr. Henderson." Malik nodded and stepped inside. The room was sterile. Fluorescent lights buzzing faintly overhead. A long table stretched across the front, where 4 faculty members and 2 student representatives sat, flanked by a university lawyer. At the end of the table, Kessler sat straight-backed, calm, with a leather binder neatly in front of him. Not a single paper out of place. Malik was directed to sit in the chair at the center of the room, a small plastic seat with no desk facing the panel like a defendant on trial. The chair squeaked as he sat. No one smiled. The lead faculty member, a woman named Dr. Ames, cleared her throat. "Mr. Henderson, you've been called to this hearing following a formal academic misconduct complaint filed by Professor Warren Kessler. The charge involves unauthorized recording of lectures, potential breaches of classroom policy, and disruptive conduct." She paused. "You understand these charges?" Malik nodded once. "I understand them." "Do you admit to recording the lecture?" A beat passed. "Yes," he said. "He recorded the lecture not for distribution, but for documentation." Kessler leaned forward. "He's admitting it. That's grounds for immediate disciplinary action." The lawyer beside Dr. Ames scribbled something on a yellow legal pad. "But," Malik continued, voice calm but steady, "I also have evidence that those lectures include ongoing academic misconduct and targeted grading bias." The room shifted just slightly. Dr. Ames raised an eyebrow. "That's a serious accusation." Kessler spoke smoothly. "This student has made a habit of deflecting responsibility by inventing conspiracies when his performance fails to meet standards. I've given him every opportunity to succeed." Malik turned to him. "Every opportunity except a fair one." The panel looked between them. Tension building. Malik pulled the flash drive from his pocket and placed it on the small table in front of him. On this drive are over 20 hours of class recordings, all audio and some video. It includes lectures, grading discrepancies, emails, and multiple incidents where Professor Kessler made inappropriate comments directed at me, both subtle and direct. I have proof that my grades were altered without academic justification and that I was penalized for formatting rules that were never taught. Dr. Ames looked at the drive, then at Malik. "Did you report any of these concerns through official university channels before today?" "No," Malik said, "because the channels protect the people at the top." Kessler scoffed quietly. "Paranoia doesn't prove misconduct." Malik ignored him. "But I wasn't just documenting for myself," he said, his voice tightening. "Other students, especially black students, have been through this before. Some dropped out. One almost took her life. I'm here because I finally realized silence wasn't protecting me, it was protecting him." The room went still. No one moved. No one spoke. Malik leaned forward, unzipping his backpack and pulling out a laptop. He opened it, slid in the flash drive, and double-clicked a file labeled Week 6 Lecture Timestamp 43 Min. Kessler bias. Kessler shifted in his seat. The audio began to play. "Some of you, I fear, are here because of opportunities rather than aptitude." Then Malik's voice. "Could you clarify what you mean by opportunities?" Kessler's voice again. "Scholarships, quotas, institutional generosity. Surely you understand what I'm referring to." The room was silent, the kind of silence that bends the air around it. Malik let the clip play. Then another, and another, each one more damning than the last. Comments about coasting, remarks about needing discipline, quiz feedback that contradicted rubrics. One by one, the audio peeled back the polished veneer Kessler had built over decades. The panel sat motionless. Even Kessler wasn't smiling now. His face had gone tight, eyes narrowed. Dr. Ames cleared her throat. "Do you have evidence of altered grades?" He clicked another folder, grade comparisons. Kessler spoke up, louder this time. "This is an orchestrated smear campaign. You're letting a student hijack protocol to avoid accountability. He's in violation of academic policy. That's the only issue here." Malik didn't look at him. He addressed the panel. "You can focus on the policy violation, or you can ask why a student felt the need to protect himself in the first place." A long pause. One of the student reps, a girl with short curls and a law textbook in her lap, finally leaned forward. Has anyone corroborated Mr. Henderson's claims from past semesters? Dr. Ames hesitated. We haven't reviewed that data yet. Malik spoke again. There's no paper trail. But there are students. Ask Elijah Thomas. Ask Simone Carter. Ask the ones who left. The panel shifted, suddenly alert. Malik felt it. The subtle turning of the tide. And then, Kessler snapped. This is absurd, he barked. I've built my reputation over 20 years. You're going to throw it away because one student can't handle criticism? His voice cracked just slightly on the last word. It echoed through the room like the shatter of a mask. Malik sat still, but his voice came firm. I'm not here to take down your reputation, Professor. I'm here to protect mine. The panel fell quiet again. Kessler looked ready to speak but stopped himself. His face was flushed, breath slightly uneven. Dr. Ames finally looked toward the lawyer, then back at Malik. We will need time to review the recordings and materials provided. You'll be contacted for follow-up.
Malik nodded. Thank you.
He stood, gathering his things slowly. As he turned to leave, he looked back once, not at the panel, but directly at Kessler. For the first time, the professor didn't look like a man in control. He looked like a man cornered by his own record. As Malik reached the hallway, his phone vibrated with a new message, this one anonymous, with no sender ID. It read, "You're not the first. You won't be the last. They're watching you now." The message glowed on Malik's phone screen, like a whisper in the dark. You're not the first. You won't be the last. They're watching you now.
No sender. No timestamp. Just those 12 words.
He stood frozen in the hallway outside the Office of Academic Affairs. The fluorescent lights above suddenly harsher, colder. The building's silence felt heavier now, almost conspiratorial. Malik's mind raced. Was it a threat, a warning, or a hand reaching out from the shadows of someone else's forgotten fight? He slipped the phone into his pocket, forcing himself to move. He had walked into the hearing alone, but he didn't feel alone anymore. Someone was watching. And maybe, just maybe, they were watching for the right reasons. The following week dragged by in a haze of tension and rumor. Word spread like wildfire across campus. Students whispered in hallways, paused their conversations when Malik passed. Some gave him silent nods of support. Others looked away, afraid to be caught on the wrong side of something they didn't fully understand. What Malik did understand, clearly now, was that the university had gone into damage control. Emails from the administration became more frequent, more carefully worded. The dean issued a vague statement about protecting academic integrity while reviewing all concerns equitably. A flyer went up for a new bias awareness workshop, scheduled months too late. But behind the curtain, something else was happening. Dr. Ames had contacted Malik, requesting access to the full audio archives. A task force hastily assembled was beginning to listen, quietly, behind locked doors. The committee was supposed to be neutral, but Malik could feel the discomfort in every response. The university wasn't trying to uncover truth. They were trying to manage fallout. He could see it in the way faculty members now avoided eye contact in the halls. In how Elijah, the TA, received a reassignment notice, temporarily removing him from Kessler's class. In how 3 students who had once laughed at Malik's expense now posted vague quotes on social media about systemic injustice and learning to do better. The files were undeniable. Clips of Kessler mocking Malik's answers, undermining his intelligence through tone, not content, grading patterns that contradicted the syllabus. And most damning, the moment Kessler accused Malik of benefiting from institutional generosity, implying his presence in the classroom was a result of charity, not merit. The committee requested a meeting. This time, it wasn't a trial, not formally, but the room looked eerily familiar. Malik sat across from 3 senior administrators, including the provost herself. Her voice was clipped and formal. We want to thank you for your cooperation, Mr. Henderson. The material you've submitted is substantial. Malik said nothing. One of the other administrators, a pale man with silver-framed glasses, cleared his throat. It's clear the language used by Professor Kessler was inappropriate in tone. In tone. Not in intent. Not in content. Another administrator chimed in. The university is taking this seriously. We're launching an internal investigation into classroom conduct and grading practices. Malik finally spoke. What does that mean? The provost folded her hands. It means we'll be reviewing all relevant documentation to determine whether policy was violated. Malik narrowed his eyes. And what happens if you find out it was? Silent. The man with glasses adjusted his tie. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. It was a soft answer, one meant to reassure without committing to change. Malik recognized it instantly. But he wasn't here for soft answers anymore. He leaned forward. I have over 20 hours of recordings, dozens of inconsistencies, testimony from former students. How much more do you need to admit this isn't just a violation? It's a pattern. The provost's expression hardened slightly. Mr. Henderson, we're not denying the seriousness of the situation. But you must understand. Institutions require process. We cannot act on emotion. Malik stood, slowly. This isn't emotion. This is evidence. The meeting ended with more polite reassurances and careful non-promises. Malik left with the distinct feeling that justice, if it came at all, would be served in whispers, not headlines. Later that night, as Malik sat at his desk, reviewing the same clips for the 100th time, a new notification popped up. Anonymous user sent you a file. Attached was a folder Kessler's pattern, encrypted, password protected. No message, no instructions. Malik hesitated, fingers hovering over the keyboard. The name alone was enough to chill him. He tried a few basic passwords. Then, instinctively, he typed, Simone Carter. The folder unlocked. Inside were dozens of documents, scanned complaint letters, resignation emails, grade appeals, unofficial transcripts, redacted names, but matching stories. Year after year, students had written in frustration, fear or resignation, complaints about bias, about grades, about subtle discouragement. One student described being pulled aside after class and told, "This might not be the field for you." Another wrote, "He made me feel like every mistake confirmed his suspicion about me." There were no official university responses, just dead-end email threads. No follow-up. Then Malik saw it. A document labeled confidential memo. He clicked. It was an internal memo, sent from the Office of Faculty Development. Regarding the recurring concerns about Professor Warren Kessler, we advise continued monitoring but discourage immediate disciplinary action. Professor Kessler brings significant funding to the department and has tenure protections. Unless a direct violation is publicly acknowledged, intervention is not recommended. Malik sat frozen. There it was. Written proof. The university knew. They had chosen silence. He forwarded the file to Elijah immediately. Within minutes, Elijah replied, "I've never seen this. Where did you get it?" Malik didn't answer. He didn't know how to. The file had appeared from nowhere, or from somewhere deeper than he dared to reach. Another message pinged. Same anonymous user. "You're almost there, but they won't go quietly." Malik exhaled slowly. He minimized the screen and stared at his reflection in the laptop. His face looked different now. Tired, yes, but resolved. Kessler had built a fortress around his reputation, an ivory tower held up by silence, fear, and administrative complicity. But the foundation was cracking. Malik hadn't just exposed one man. He'd exposed a structure, a blueprint for academic racism, that wore a suit and smiled at faculty luncheons. He saved all the files to an external drive and locked it away. He had what he needed now, enough to break the silence, and maybe, just maybe, change the system that had always called itself fair. As Malik closed his laptop for the night, a new file appeared on his desktop without any action from him. The title read simply, Simone Carter, Audio Confession. The file sat on Malik's desktop like a ticking bomb. Simone Carter, Audio Confession. He stared at it for a long time, fingers hovering over the mouse. No one had ever spoken directly about Simone, not in detail. She was a name mentioned in whispers, a warning passed quietly between students of color. Don't challenge Kessler. Look what happened to Simone. But no one had ever confirmed the full story. Until now. Malik clicked play. A low hiss of static filled his earbuds. Then a soft inhale. Simone's voice was calm, but you could hear the wear in it. The voice of someone who had survived, but not without scars. "I'm only recording this because I want it on record somewhere. Kessler, he didn't just fail me, he erased me. Every time I asked questions, he'd say I was overcomplicating the problem. Every time I used a different method, he said I was showing off. When I got something right, he'd question how I got there. I felt like I was being tested for my presence, not my answers." Malik leaned forward, listening as if her words were oxygen. "I reported him. Twice. Nothing happened. First they said my complaint lacked specificity. Then they said I should focus on my academic development. I was carrying a 3.9 GPA. After Kessler, I barely graduated. I lost my scholarship. I transferred out because I was scared I'd break if I stayed. They recorded. A pause. A shaky exhale. I know I wasn't the first. And I'm terrified I won't be the last. The file ended with silence. Malik sat still, the hum of his laptop fan the only sound in the room. His eyes burned, not from tears, but from the sheer aching truth of it all. Simone's voice wasn't just telling her story. It was speaking for every unheard student, swallowed by the same system. He opened a Kessler's pattern folder again. Dozens of files, most labeled only by year or initials. JTT. Anonymous statement. Withdrawal email. Each one told a similar story. 7 different students. All black, over the span of 10 years. One withdrew mid-semester after receiving 3 failing grades on tests they later proved were miscalculated. One dropped out of the department entirely, switching majors after a brutal public critique that left them too anxious to attend class. Another had written, simply, "He made me feel like math was a locked room, and I didn't have the key." But the worst was from EG. Their statement was longer, messier. It included screenshots of suicide forum posts and a blurred photo of a hospital bracelet. I just wanted someone to believe I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't imagining the different treatment, that my mistakes weren't bigger just because of my skin. I tried to talk to student affairs. They told me to take a leave of absence. I almost took a permanent one. Malik sat back in his chair, the weight of it pressing down on his chest. This wasn't about him anymore. It never had been. He wasn't the first student to be pushed to the edge by a man protected by his tenure and celebrated by the institution. Kessler wasn't just a professor, he was a gatekeeper, and the gate had only ever opened for certain students. And the university had always known. That's what burned the most. The complaints, the emails, the whispers, they were never hidden. They were ignored, systematically, conveniently. Malik compiled everything into a master folder: Legacy of Silence, Kessler Case, Inside Video Clips, Audio Confessions, Grading Analysis Spreadsheets, Confidential Memos, Names, some real, some redacted, stories, all of them true. But truth alone wasn't enough. Not here. Not in a system designed to survive its own sins. He needed eyes, loud ones. Eyes that couldn't be ignored. That's when the email came. Subject journalism. Inquiry. Re Professor Kessler. From Alicia Kane, editor, The Daily Pennington. Hi Malik, I've been following what's happening around your case. I saw the public statement the university released. It read more like a press release than a commitment to justice. I want to talk off the record. At first, if you're willing to meet, I think what you have could be bigger than a policy violation. Alicia Kane. Malik read the email 3 times. He remembered Alicia vaguely. The girl who sat front row in the ethics seminar last semester, always typing, always watching. People said she once wrote an exposé about the university's mishandling of a housing discrimination case and merely got expelled for it. She was relentless and fearless. He opened a new message, named the place and time. She replied within minutes. Midnight, off campus, Cafe Orpheus, come alone. He stared at the reply, a strange feeling blooming in his chest. This wasn't just about data anymore. It was about narrative. Who got to tell the story, and who got to be remembered. Malik knew Kessler would deny everything, until his last breath. The university would play neutral, drag its feet, offer inclusivity workshops, instead of accountability. But the media, even a student paper, could start something they couldn't control. And Alicia Kane wasn't just a student journalist. She was a spark. He stood gathering the flash drive, his backup hard drive, and his printed file summaries. Before leaving, he took one last look at the screen, the open folder, the names, the echoes. He whispered aloud, as if to the ghosts of the stories on that drive. I hear you. I'm not letting this go quiet. As he zipped up his backpack, his phone buzzed again, a new message from an unknown number. Just one sentence. You bring this public and you'll regret what comes next. The neon sign outside Cafe Orpheus buzzed faintly in the cold midnight air. Malik stood across the street, hood up, eyes scanning the windows. Inside, the cafe was mostly empty. One barista mopping the floor, a couple whispering in the corner, and at a small table by the back wall tapping away at a laptop, was Alicia Kane. She looked exactly how he remembered. Sharp features, dark-rimmed glasses, a flannel shirt over a black tank top, and the kind of eyes that didn't blink when things got ugly. When she looked up and saw him, she didn't wave, just tilted her head, like she was already analyzing his body language. Malik stepped in, the bell above the door chiming softly. As he approached her table, Alicia closed the laptop and slid it aside. "You brought the heat?" she asked. Malik nodded and placed the flash drive on the table. Alicia didn't reach for it yet. "Before I look at that, let me be clear. Stories like this don't end clean. If I write this, it won't just be about Kessler. It'll be about the university, the system, the silence, and the blowback won't land on me. It'll land on you." "I know," Malik said calmly. "I still want it out there." She studied him for a moment, as if trying to measure how much of him was fear, how much was fire. "Okay," she said, picking up the drive. "Let's crack it open." They spent the next 3 hours, hunched over her laptop. Alicia reviewed every clip, read every transcript, cross-checked documents, listened to Simone's audio confession 3 times. By 3:00 a.m., her fingers were trembling slightly. "This isn't just a scandal," she whispered. "This is systemic rot. He's not a rogue professor. He's a weapon the university protected." Malik nodded, eyes locked on the screen. "That's the part they're afraid of." Alicia leaned back, running both hands through her curls. "They'll never greenlight this through the school paper. Not a chance. But you're the editor, and I still answer to a faculty advisor," she said. "And the moment they realize this threatens funding, prestige, or a single tenured seat, they'll kill it." Malik didn't say anything. He didn't need to. He already knew. But Alicia added, a slow grin forming, "I have a workaround." She opened a browser window and typed in a URL, truthfrequencies.net, a site Malik had never heard of. It was her personal blog, dormant since high school. "It's not flashy," she said, "but it's mine. No oversight. No filters." Malik raised an eyebrow. "You'd risk that?" Alicia looked at him seriously. "I'd risk it for 2 reasons. 1, because the truth matters. And 2, because if I don't run this, I'll spend the rest of my life writing about cafeteria menu changes and funding announcements, while people like Kessler keep rewriting history." She got to work. For the next 2 days, Alicia wrote like a woman possessed. She didn't just report, she built a narrative. A meticulous takedown that traced Kessler's tactics across years, layered in voices from past victims, analyzed grading patterns, and quoted Simone's confession verbatim. The article opened with a line that hit like thunder. "At Pennington University, racism isn't spoken, it's structured." She titled it, "Graded by Color, the Silent Collapse of Black Students in Room 3." On the 3rd morning, she clicked publish.
Nothing happened at first. Then, everything did.
By noon, the post had 10,000 views. By 5 p.m., it went viral. Students across campus flooded Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok with hashtags like #No34Truth and expose Kessler. Alumni began sharing their own stories of quiet discrimination. A former adjunct tweeted, "I taught under him, watched him bury a dozen bright minds, always coded, always protected, glad someone finally said it." The university stayed silent. No official statement. No apology. Professors went quiet, choosing absence over allegiance. Some deactivated their social accounts. Kessler's department page mysteriously went offline. Malik's inbox flooded with messages, from strangers, from survivors, from people who said, "I thought I was crazy until I read this." Even Elijah texted, "We're watching history bend." But not everyone was celebrating. By day 3, the trolls arrived. Anonymous accounts calling Malik a liar, a fraud, an affirmative action baby. Alicia received emails warning her to watch her back, telling her she'd ruined a good man's career. The university still hadn't responded. Malik stayed grounded through the chaos. He kept updating his files, sorting new testimonies that poured in through encrypted messages. Each one told the same story, in a different voice, and every single one validated his fight. Then, just after midnight, he received an email that made his stomach twist. From W. Kessler, Pennington. Subject: "You've made a mistake, son." Malik stared at the screen for several seconds before clicking it open.
Mr. Henderson.
"You've crossed a line. You don't understand the damage you've done. Not just to me, but to this institution. This isn't activism. It's defamation. And there are consequences for that." Let me be clear. If you do not issue a public retraction and remove your claims from all public platforms, I will pursue every legal avenue available. You have 48 hours. Professor Warren Kessler. There it was. Not anger, not apology, a threat. But Malik didn't shake. He didn't even flinch. He just exhaled slowly and whispered aloud. They always show you who they really are at the end. He forwarded the email to Alicia. Within minutes, she called him. He's threatening legal action. He gave me 48 hours. She paused. Good. Let him try. We've got time-stamped evidence, vetted sources, and a digital army ready to torch him if he makes a move. He's bluffing. Malik wasn't so sure. Kessler wasn't the type to bluff. He was the type to corner quietly, bury reputations in paperwork, and come out untouched. Still, something about the email felt off. Too direct, too emotional. The mask had slipped. He's losing control, Alicia said on the other end. That's good for us, but bad for whatever he's planning. Malik closed the laptop and leaned back. The article had gone live. The silence had been broken. But this wasn't over, not by a long shot. He had exposed the truth. Now he had to survive what came next. As he got ready for bed, another email pinged, not from Kessler this time, but from the university's Office of Legal Affairs. The subject line read, Notice of pending civil action, response required. Malik stared at the screen until the glow of his laptop was the only light in his room. A subject line burned into his mind. You've made a mistake, son. He replayed the message from Professor Warren Kessler for the third time. Mr. Henderson, you've crossed a line. You don't understand the damage you've done. Not just to me, but to this institution. This isn't activism. It's defamation. And there are consequences for that. Let me be clear. If you do not issue a public retraction and remove your claims from all public platforms, I will pursue every legal avenue available. You have 40. Professor Warren Kessler. Malik exhaled. A slow, deliberate release of the tension that had coiled in his shoulders all week. He forwarded the email instantly, to Alicia Kane, to the university's legal affairs office, and to his encrypted archive folder. He typed no comment. The act of forwarding felt like armor. Within minutes, his phone began vibrating. First a message from Alicia. Got it. We'll move fast. Then a dozen others from student groups, alumni networks, activist circles. We saw this. Stay strong. Need your link to share if you're okay with it. Thank you for doing this. Suddenly the story Malik had tried to control quietly had blown wide open. Social media lit up. Hashtags surged. Unstand with Malik. Expose Kessler. 30 influencers and scholars he'd never heard of reposted the article from Alicia's blog, tagged him in replies, offered solidarity from across the country. A news alert popped up on his screen. Pennington University scandal gains national attention. Headlines included phrases like tenure versus transparency, when professors silence students, campus racism goes digital. The institution that had seemed unshakable was now trending. Malik watched it all from his dorm room. His backpack still open on the floor, the folder of files next to it. He felt something strange, not triumph, exactly, but relief and fear. The fear wasn't for himself anymore. It was for what came next. Because Kessler had shown his face. The message sent a clear signal. This wouldn't be handled quietly. The person in power was no longer hidden behind polite feedback or bureaucratic letters. He was pointing his weapon, and it was personal. Malik's phone pinged again. This time, the message was from a reporter. Mr. Henderson, I'm with National Education Chronicle. We've been following the story. Would you be willing to appear on our weekly show Campus Unfiltered? Malik stared at his reflection in the screen. Wide eyes, fatigue lines already creeping. He tapped out a reply. Yes, I'll do it. Before he could celebrate, his phone rang. It was the financial aid office at the university. The display showed Pennington Univer Finance Dep. He answered. Mr. Henderson? This is Sylvia Martinez from the financial aid office. We've reviewed your current scholarship status and performance. Given recent developments, we must ask you to voluntarily suspend your public appearances pending review. Failure to comply could result in immediate revocation of your scholarship. Malik paused. His blood felt cold. He heard the words, but they felt distant. Voluntarily suspend, pending review. Revocation. I understand, he said quietly. Thank you for calling. He hung up and leaned back in his chair. The walls were closing in somehow. The article had broken the silence. The support was pouring in, but the institution struck back not just through public statements, but by threatening his financial future. A scholarship revocation would end everything. Malik tapped his laptop, opened Alicia's article, scrolled through hundreds of comments. Some praised him, some worried about him. Many thanked him. But nestled among the supportive messages were others. A screenshot of the email from the financial aid office, forwarded in a campus WhatsApp chat. Students discussing the real risk he was taking. Some saying quietly that they wished they had done what he did, but Malik closed his eyes. The weight of it settled like concrete. He was no longer just a student fighting a professor. He was a movement, and movements attract pushback. At midnight he logged off and lay on his bed, his laptop still open. He stared at the ceiling tiles, each one a reminder of every unnoticed student, every masked dismissal. The scandal was no longer his story. It was their story. A story decades in the making. Suddenly, his phone buzzed again. The text came from an unknown number. Checkpoint. Your segment has been scheduled for next Wednesday. Live national broadcast. Are you ready? Malik's heart squeezed. National television. Live. No cuts. No filter. Everything on the line. He sat up, feeling the sheets beneath him like a platform tipping. Alicia texted, "They asked for your consent online. You'll get a link in 10 minutes. I'll send you notes." He stared at the ceiling one more time. The institution had threatened his scholarship. The professor had threatened his reputation. But the tide was turning. The network of voices, the evidence, the video, the blog, they had all moved him into a different arena entirely. Suddenly, his laptop screen flickered, and a pop-up appeared. System maintenance, university portal. His stomach sank. He closed the laptop with a soft click, the quiet sound echoing. Malik's phone lit up with one final text. From Alumni Office, Pennington University. Your invitation to speak on national television has been revoked. We regret the inconvenience. Malik stared at the message, his finger hovering over reply. He took a deep breath, and then his phone buzzed again with a new email titled, Confidential CCTV Footage Submission. The fluorescent lights of the university's student center flickered above Malik as he sat staring at the email from the Office of Legal Affairs. Subject, Notice of Pending Civil Action. Response required. His hands hovered over the keyboard, the hum of the air conditioner filling the silence. The letter beneath the subject line was formal, surgical in tone, a declaration of war disguised as professionalism. Mr. Henderson, this notice is to inform you that Pennington University reserves the right to pursue disciplinary and legal action should you engage in further public commentary regarding faculty conduct or institutional operations. Office of Legal Affairs. Malik read it twice, each word colder than the one before. The meaning was clear. He could keep his scholarship, his record, his future, but only if he stopped talking, only if he became invisible again. He shut the laptop and leaned back, feeling the full weight of his choice pressing down like a stone. He knew what was waiting on the other side of silence: safety, predictability, and the quiet erasure of everything he'd fought for. But silence had cost him too much already. When his phone rang, he almost didn't answer. The caller ID read Alicia Kane. "Please tell me you've seen this," she said without greeting. Her voice was tight, almost shaking. "I just did." "They're trying to shut you up, Malik. That's what they do when they can't control the story. They make the truth look like disruption." Malik rubbed the bridge of his nose. "If I respond, I lose my scholarship. If I stay quiet, I lose myself." Alicia hesitated, her breath audible through the line. "What if I told you there's another option?" Malik frowned. "What do you mean?" "I got a call this morning from the National View. They want you live. Prime time, 10 million viewers. You'll have 5 minutes to speak your truth. Unfiltered." Malik went silent. 5 minutes, national TV, 10 million eyes. "That's not just a statement," he said finally. "That's a lifetime choice." "Exactly," Alicia replied. "They'll either hate you or crown you, but they'll never ignore you again." He sat there for a long moment, staring at the muted TV across the room, a loop of headlines about politicians and scandals in sports. None of it mattered. This was his moment to decide what mattered. When he spoke, his voice was steady. "Set it up." The studio was colder than he expected. Bright, sterile lights washed out the color from everything, even the air. Makeup artists hovered around him, brushing powder onto his face, adjusting his microphone. Behind him, a screen projected an image of Pennington University's grand stone gates, the same gates he had once walked through full of pride and naive belief in fairness. The producer's voice came from somewhere off-screen. "You'll be live in 90 seconds. Remember, keep it concise. Speak from the heart. Don't name specific individuals, unless legally cleared." A different kind of silence filled the room, not the suffocating kind that came from fear. This one was charged, alive, vibrating with history. Malik's heart beat steady. At the edge of the set, Alicia gave him a small nod, half encouragement, half prayer. The host smiled at him, her tone smooth but curious. "You ready?" Malik nodded. "I've been ready my whole life." The red light went on. Cameras rolled. "Tonight," the host began, "we're speaking with Malik Henderson, a student whose story has sparked national outrage and forced universities across the country to examine their own definitions of equity. Malik, thank you for being here." He smiled faintly. "Thank you for having me." She leaned forward slightly. "You've accused one of your professors of systemic bias, and the university of protecting him. Some are calling you brave, others a troublemaker. What do you call yourself?" Malik took a breath. The cameras blinked. The world waited. "I call myself a student who stopped pretending." The host's eyebrows lifted slightly. "What do you mean by that?" He looked directly into the lens, his voice measured, calm, but sharp enough to cut glass. "I mean that for too long people like me have been taught to be grateful, just to be in the room. We're told to work twice as hard, stay twice as quiet, and never question the rules, even when the rules are rigged. But silence isn't respect, it's compliance. And I stopped complying." The studio was so still you could hear the hum of the cameras. "I'm not here to destroy anyone," he continued. "I'm here to destroy the assumption that brilliance has a color, that discipline has a race, that my presence in a classroom is some kind of exception to the rule. I worked for everything I earned, and if that makes people uncomfortable, maybe the system deserves to be uncomfortable." The host sat back, visibly moved. "You're aware this could cost you your scholarship, maybe your degree." Malik didn't hesitate. "If my education requires my silence, then it was never education. It was obedience." The audience behind the glass burst into applause, even though they weren't supposed to. The segment went viral before the show even ended. Within hours, clips of Malik's words flooded social media. Hashtags spread. "Silence is not learning." "Malik Henderson. Truth in classrooms." Celebrities retweeted it. Scholars called it a manifesto for modern academia. Even teachers across the country began showing the clip in classrooms. Donations began to pour in. Not to Pennington, but to Malik himself. Crowdfunding pages raised hundreds of thousands in scholarships for Black students. Letters arrived by the hundreds. One was from Simone Carter, the student who disappeared years ago. "You finished what I couldn't. Thank you for giving our pain a name." But not everyone celebrated. By morning, the university released a statement, distancing itself from unauthorized media appearances. They accused Malik of misrepresenting the facts and defaming the integrity of Pennington's academic community. And then the final blow. The envelope arrived by courier that evening. Thick, embossed, carrying a law firm's seal. Malik opened it slowly, knowing what waited inside. Notice of intent to sue. Warren Kessler Vor E. Malik Henderson. Grounds: defamation, character damage, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Claim $2,000 in damages. Malik stood in his apartment, the letter trembling slightly in his hand. His phone buzzed non-stop. Text from Alicia, Elijah, friends, strangers, all asking if it was true. He didn't answer. He just looked out the window at the campus beyond the trees. The same campus that had once promised him fairness, then tried to buy his silence, and now threatened to bury him for speaking. But his voice had already left the building. It was in the air now, unstoppable. He folded the letter carefully and placed it beside the flash drive that had started everything. His phone lit up again, this time with a new message from an unknown number. "You're not being sued for defamation," it read. "You're being sued to hide what we missed. There's more. Check your email." The morning light in the courtroom was gray and heavy, as though the sun itself was reluctant to witness what was about to happen. Malik Henderson sat at the plaintiff's table, his stack of folders and flash drives neatly arranged before him. Across the aisle sat Warren Kessler, his suit impeccable, his posture rigid, Behind him, members of his legal team whispered quietly. The judge, a former educator with a stern face and kind eyes, entered the room and took his seat, tapping lightly on the gavel. From the outset, it was clear this was no ordinary student complaint hearing. The courtroom buzzed with media presence, cameras in the back row, reporters leaning forward in their chairs. This had become a national spectacle, a microcosm of something much larger than one generation's calculus class. Kessler's attorney opened first. "Your Honor," he began, voice smooth, "what we have here is a student who seeks fame, not fairness. Malik Henderson has turned legitimate classroom evaluations into a public spectacle. He recorded lectures without permission, systematically gathered data, and now presents a narrative of bias rather than academic performance." The lawyer paused, surveying the jury, then continued, "We will show today that Professor Kessler applies rigorous standards evenly, not selectively. Any discrepancy in grades reflects the student's performance, not unconscious bias." He sat. Kessler nodded once tightly. Malik's team stood next. His lawyer, a calm woman in her 40s with silvered hair, looked at him and nodded. Then she turned to the jury. "Honorable members of the jury," she said, "this case is not about a poor grade. It is not about an overambitious student. This is about legacy. It is about systemic assumptions. Malik Henderson is not the textbook version of a college mathematician in that room, so he's been treated like the exception, rather than the rule. We will prove that the evidence is not anecdotal. It is archival. 20 hours of recordings, grading analyses, internal memos showing concerns that were suppressed, not addressed." She clicked a remote and the large screen behind her flickered to life, displaying rows of red-marked quizzes, side-by-side comparisons of white students' grades and Malik's, timelines of interactions. The judge leaned forward, gaze steady. "Proceed," he said. Throughout the day, the evidence rolled in. Malik's lawyer presented clips of Kessler's lectures, where expectations changed mid-term, where certain students were praised with soft language, while Malik was publicly critiqued with harsh words. One audio clip recorded Kessler saying, "Perhaps some of you are here because of path built for you, not because you built it yourself." The lawyer paused, looked at the jury. "Built for you," the implication swollen, unsaid. Then came the grading spreadsheet. Malik's lawyer walked the jury through rows. Student A, white, answered problem 1 incorrectly, lost 1 point. Malik answered correctly, and lost 5. Student B, white, answered problem 3 with a flawed method, and still scored a B. Malik did correct method, and scored a D. She showed email exchanges, timestamps evidencing Malik asked questions respectfully, and was told focus on the material rather than questions. She concluded, "This is pattern, not performance. This is not critique. This is control." Kessler's team shifted uncomfortably. They questioned the collection of data, the timing of recordings, the intent behind the actions. "How do we know this isn't self-oriented?" one asked. "How do we know Malik doesn't want the spotlight?" They picked at form, at motive more than fact. The defense attorney hammered, "Bias must be evident. Subjective suspicion is not evidence." Kessler sat expressionless. The judge took notes. When he asked questions, they were pointed. "Professor Kessler, can you explain why a student who answered correctly was graded lower than peers who answered incorrectly?" The professor's answer was measured. "Academic evaluation is holistic. I evaluate clarity, method, presentation, not only final answer." His voice betrayed strain. The jury scribbled. At lunch break, Malik sat quietly in the hallway outside the courtroom. Elijah's text still in his hand. "We're watching history bend." Support messages pinged on his phone. Black scholars, influencers, past students. This wasn't just a personal fight anymore. It was becoming legacy rewriting. When the hearing resumed, the university's internal memo was entered into evidence. It said, "Professor Kessler brings significant funding to the department and has tenure protections. Unless a direct violation is publicly acknowledged, intervention is not recommended." The courtroom gasped. The judge asked for a sidebar. A hush spread through the audience. This twist, proof that the institution had knowingly shielded misconduct, changed the tone of the case. Kessler's defenders looked shocked. Malik's allies leaned forward. The rest of the afternoon passed in tension. Closing statements were crisp and emotional. Malik's lawyer said, "This is not merely about one grade or one professor. It is about whether the promise of fairness in education holds for everyone. The classroom should not be a place where your presence is questioned before your work is even evaluated." Kessler's attorney closed. To claim discrimination means you have to demonstrate that race, not performance, was the basis. We maintained the assessments were fair and consistent. Then silent. The jury retired. The judge addressed them. Take all the time you need. We will reconvene for your verdict. Malik exhaled slowly, his eyes on the floor but his mind racing. He left the courtroom guarded by reporters, cameras flashing. Supporters cheered quietly. Detractors glared. He felt the weight of this moment. Not the triumph yet, but the possibility. Hours later, just after the jury filed back in, Malik's phone buzzed. It was an encrypted message from an unknown number. We have something new. Surveillance footage from Kessler's office. Are you ready to add this to the record? The courtroom was dead silent. Even the humming air conditioner seemed to pause as the foreman of the jury stood, the verdict slip trembling slightly in his hand. Malik sat upright, not breathing. His attorney placed a steadying hand on the table, her eyes calm but locked forward. On the other side, Kessler remained stone-faced, lips pressed so tightly they had turned pale. The judge leaned forward. Has the jury reached a verdict? The foreman nodded. We have, Your Honor. The bailiff stepped forward, took the slip, and handed it to the judge. A beat, too. The judge read the note, then looked up. Not cold, but solemn. In the matter of Malik Henderson versus Professor Warren Kessler and Pennington University, the judge said, voice firm, we find in favor of the plaintiff. Gasps broke out in the gallery. A few cries of yes from students in the back. Malik exhaled like he'd been holding that breath since the semester started. But the judge wasn't finished. Furthermore, he continued, we find that Professor Kessler acted with discriminatory intent, and the university failed in its duty to address a pattern of bias. As such, damages are to be awarded in the amount of 2. Kessler flinched. His lawyer leaned in, already whispering about appeals. Malik's lawyer barely moved, except for a faint triumphant smile at the corner of her lips. But it wasn't the money that echoed loudest. It was the second ruling. The court also recommends, though it cannot enforce, that Pennington University immediately revise its academic policies to ensure transparency in grading and conduct an external audit of faculty evaluations spanning the last decade. This wasn't just a verdict. It was a blueprint. Malik stood when instructed, but even as applause broke out behind him, he didn't smile. His hands were calm at his sides. He looked at Kessler once, not out of spite, but clarity. He had come not to destroy the man, but to break the mask, and the mask was off. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Alicia Kane stood at the front, flanked by Elijah and 2 of Malik's former classmates, who had testified. Camera shutters clicked like gunfire. Microphones were thrust into his face. Malik, how does it feel? Do you think this will start a wave of similar cases? Will you return to Pennington to finish your degree? He only said one thing. Justice is not a headline. It's a start. By nightfall, the story was everywhere. National broadcasts, education blogs, academic journals. CNN's headline read, Student wins landmark case against tenured professor, bias, brilliance, and the battle for fairness. The university issued a stiff, formulaic statement, citing its respect for the legal process and pledging to create an inclusive learning environment moving forward. But behind the PR curtain, change began rippling. Students organized, demands were submitted. Mandatory bias training for all faculty, independent auditing of final grades, anonymous feedback channels, a dedicated ombudsman for racial discrimination, more black faculty. Now, departments scrambled. Syllabi were rewritten overnight. Faculty meetings extended into the early morning. Donors sent conflicting messages. Some pulled funding, others doubled their contributions, praising Malik for forcing evolution. Malik, meanwhile, refused all interviews. He didn't return calls from networks offering prime-time slots. He declined book deals, speaking tours, even a special feature in The Atlantic. Then came the honorary degree offer. Pennington University, under immense public pressure, reached out with a carefully worded proposal. An honorary doctorate in educational equity, a public apology at graduation, a bronze plaque on the wall outside room 304, now retired. Malik said no. In a one-sentence reply he wrote, I came to learn, not to be honored for surviving what should never have happened. Instead, he disappeared from the public eye for a month. Elijah thought he'd taken a break. Alicia assumed he was resting. But Malik had started building something. In a co-working space on the other side of town, lit by cheap LED strips and surrounded by whiteboards filled with sketches, formulas, and diagrams. Malik was writing code. Day and night. Sleepless again. But for a different reason. He called it Redefine. It started as an idea scribbled in his notebook after his first humiliating quiz. A platform where students could track discrepancies, upload notes, compare grades anonymously, and review instructors in a way that mattered. Not like Rate My Professors with its popularity contests, but with actual academic data. Redefine would let students build profiles, not to boast, but to protect. A place where pattern recognition wasn't just a back-end algorithm. It was the heart of the system. And more than that, a resource hub, tutor matching, crisis referrals, real stories from real students across campuses nationwide. The app grew fast. His first beta group, 10 black and brown students from 5 schools, uploaded 127 examples of pattern-based academic targeting within a week. Then came the twist. A venture capitalist, black, female, an alum from Malik's rival university, contacted him after reading Alicia's original blog. She asked for a Zoom meeting. She didn't pitch a brand deal or a merger. She offered to fund the entire app's development and pay him a founder's salary. Malik declined. Instead, he asked her to sponsor 10 interns from HBCUs to help him scale it, not just build the app, but build a team. She said yes, and within 2 weeks, Redefine was a movement. Soon colleges were discussing the platform in meetings. Some feared it, others tried to co-opt it, but none could ignore it. One student from a Midwestern university sent a message that Malik saved. "You don't know me, but your app saved me. I thought I was the problem. Then I saw my story mirrored. For the first time, I didn't feel alone. Thank you." Malik sat with that message for a long time. Quiet, no applause, just the gravity of what it meant. Room 304 was empty now, but Malik had turned it into a digital space. A symbol, a reckoning, not for vengeance, but for visibility. One night, while updating the Redefine server logs, a new user pinged the system. The location, Pennington University. The profile name, W. Kessler 4, and the account requested student feedback access. The apartment was dark except for the soft blue glow of Malik's monitor. The message sat open, its final line seared into his chest. "You're not being sued for defamation. You're being sued to hide what we missed. There's more. Check your email." He clicked into his inbox. Heart tightening. A new encrypted message had arrived. No sender name, no subject. Inside was a single file, Kessler Office CCTV, final. For a moment, Malik didn't move. His breath caught in the kind of silence that doesn't come from peace, but anticipation. He clicked play. The footage was grainy, pulled from a fixed overhead camera. Kessler's office. Same sterile bookshelves, same manicured desk. But this wasn't an academic meeting. Kessler stood in front of a younger TA, red-faced, gesturing sharply. The audio was muffled, but the captions auto-generated and synced were unmistakable. "Stop bringing him data." I said, "Shut it down. I don't care how good his answers are. But sir, he's right. He doesn't belong in this department. He belongs where he started. I'm not spending my tenure babysitting exceptions." Malik's jaw clenched. He watched as the TA stood frozen, then quietly collected a stack of papers. Kessler snatched one from his hand, scanned it, and muttered, "Rewrite the grade. I don't care how." The footage ended. No audio enhancements. No dramatic music. Just truth, captured in still, silent pixels. Malik forwarded it to Alicia, Elijah, and his legal team. No words. Just the file. Then he opened his laptop and clicked into the Redefine admin panel. It was time. The next morning, Redefine officially launched nationwide. The interface was clean, efficient, and bold. Students could anonymously rate professors on fairness, clarity, and respect. Upload assignments, grading rubrics, or recorded lectures for pattern reviews. Access a verified network of tutors, volunteers from Ivy League schools, HBCUs, and major state universities. Join moderated forums to share experiences without fear of academic retaliation. In just 48 hours, 30,000 users signed up. By the end of the first week, it passed 1. News outlets called it the glass door for academia. Professors called it a digital uprising. Students called it salvation. Malik built in features to ensure it stayed credible. All uploads were reviewed by a trained ethics panel. Professors could respond, but not retaliate. Data patterns flagged repeat bias, not one-time conflict. The effect was immediate. At Pennington, whispers turned to storm. Kessler's profile received hundreds of reviews, patterns unmistakable. The university announced his early retirement. Health reasons, they claimed, but everyone knew the truth. His last semester ended with an empty office and locked cabinets. But it didn't stop with him. In Michigan, a math professor was suspended after Redefine showed 8 years of consistent GPA suppression against black students. In Texas, a business ethics professor resigned after a forum post exposed racist remarks during office hours. In New York, a lawsuit was filed citing Redefine's analytics as primary evidence. Alicia's article on the app hit the Atlantic. The headline read, "The Code That Cracked Campus Silence." Malik gave no interviews. He didn't need to. The app was speaking for him now. He hired Elijah full-time, then brought on Simone Carter, who came back not just as a voice, but as a lead advisor. Together they formed a board of students and educators to oversee growth. For the first time, the students were gatekeepers. One afternoon, as Malik worked through a server migration issue in the co-working space, an email arrived. From Van Horn Capital @ Confidential Investments. Subject: Let's talk. Redefine acquisition. He opened it. Mr. Henderson, we've been watching Redefine very closely. Your growth curve is one of the fastest in educational tech history. Your social impact? Unmatched. We are prepared to offer you $10 million to acquire the full platform and all proprietary data rights. Your leadership can remain intact, or you may choose a graceful exit with a full payout. We can finalize within 72 hours. Respectfully, Jordan Van Horn, CEO, Van Horn Capital Group. Malik stared at the email for a long moment. $10 million. It was enough to pay off every debt, fund every dream. His mother could retire. His siblings could go to college for free. But something in the language made his skin crawl. Proprietary data rights. Graceful exit. They weren't buying a tool. They were buying silence. He forwarded the email to Alicia and Elijah. No comment. Elijah responded first. He wants to gut it. It'll be a ghost in 6 months. Alicia's response came a minute later. Say no. Or say yes and build a better one with the payout. Either way, make sure you stay in control. Malik leaned back, eyes drifting across the room to a wall of whiteboards, filled with the next version of the platform. Redefine 2.0. It included academic mentorship, mental health support, even a legal aid directory for students filing formal complaints. The app wasn't a business. It was a blueprint for protection. He opened a reply window to Van Horn. Mr. Van Horn, thank you for your offer. Redefine isn't for sale. It was never built for profit. It was built because no one listened when we whispered. Now we don't have to whisper anymore. Respectfully, Malik Henderson. He clicked send. Outside, the sky darkened with summer rain. But inside, Malik smiled for the first time in weeks. The kind of smile that wasn't about revenge, but about resolve. He turned back to his laptop. Users were already submitting reviews for professors in Canada. A school in South Africa had reached out. A graduate program in London wanted to partner. The silence that once suffocated had become a signal, bouncing between servers, spreading across oceans. Just as Malik was about to shut down for the night, a notification popped up on his screen. New student submission. You don't know me, but I was in the same calculus class. I saw what Kessler did, and I recorded everything too. Malik Henderson stood outside the entrance of Pennington University one last time. As a student, he looked at the same carved stone arch and wrought iron gate that had once welcomed him and betrayed him, and felt no bitterness. Not today. He felt resolve. The campus was quiet in the late afternoon light, leaves stirring in the breeze, distant footsteps echoing in the quad. The world he once entered full of hope had shifted under his weight, and now he was ready to step into what came next. When the $10 million acquisition offer arrived from Van Horn Capital, a polished invitation to turn the platform into profit, Malik had paused. He opened the message, read each word carefully. Proprietary rights, exit plan, graceful transition. The language stung. It wasn't an offer of support, it was an offer of erasure, to sell out the mission in order to monetize silence. He dialed Alicia and Elijah, his voice quiet but firm. I'm not for sale. In the weeks that followed, he transformed Redefine from a startup into a nonprofit. The decision wasn't easy. or popular in some circles, but it was foundational. The board was restructured. Student leaders from HBCUs, underrepresented STEM graduates, and educators with lived experience of institutional bias. Malik didn't sit at the head of the table, he stood in the room. He'd taken the role of founder and facilitator, not celebrity. Data privacy protocols were tightened, servers secured, and open-source tools built to allow students and faculty alike to audit grading patterns. Volunteers from across the nation signed up: tutors, mentors, legal advisors. Redefine's tagline became, quietly, your voice, your record, your future. Within months, Redefine's reach spread beyond Pennington. A legacy program launched for underrepresented students in STEM, summer boot camps hosted at community colleges, scholarships funded by alumni who wanted change, online mentorship programs that matched high schoolers with engineers and mathematicians. Malik spoke rarely at first, letting results speak louder. He watched remote sessions where young black girls solved differential equations under the guidance of mentors who once thought they didn't belong, now forming community. He watched students from rural towns upload anonymous data about professors they feared, upload inclinations, comments, grading inconsistencies. Redefine became both shield and sword. At the university level, change rippled. Pennington's Board of Trustees convened emergency meetings. Policies were rewritten. External audits ordered. For once, students weren't simply reacting, they were shaping. Kessler's name became a footnote in faculty training sessions. Case study: what not to be. Instead of ignoring the failure, the department installed new faculty evaluation systems, with transparency, cross-referenced grade distributions, and student-led review committees. The auditorium that once housed Kessler's lecture now displayed a plaque acknowledging the commitment to equity and accountability. But Malik didn't attend the unveiling. He watched through news feeds. Meanwhile, awards and recognition rolled in for Malik. He was nominated for National Educational Equity Prizes, invited to speak at conferences, and asked to consult on policy reform at multiple institutions. But he consistently declined the spotlight. His refusal to accept an honorary doctorate from his own alma mater was the clearest signal. He sent a letter: I came to learn, not to be honored for surviving what should never have happened. He didn't want accolades, he wanted systems change. Then the twist. One cold Thursday afternoon, Malik received an invitation from Pennington University itself. An official letter bearing the university seal. He opened it in his small home office. The walls lined with code sketches and whiteboards. The letter read, "The Board of Trustees is pleased to invite Dr. Malik Henderson to join Pennington University as a full tenured professor in mathematics and educational equity." He stared. Dr. Malik Henderson, tenured, at his former institution. In the moment the invitation settled in his hands, a flood of memories washed over him. The first quiz, the humiliating grading, the email that belittled him, the recordings, the trial, Redefine rising, Kessler retreating. It was full circle, but the arc bent differently. He wasn't entering as the wronged student. He was being invited as an agent of change. He wasn't returning to stay silent. He was arriving to reshape the corridors that had tried to contain him. Malik called Alicia. "I got it," he said. Her voice on the other end cracked slightly with surprise. "They're serious." He then called Elijah. "Yes," he said quietly. "I'll do it." They asked why. Malik paused. Because silence was never part of the curriculum. That sentence hung in the air. In that moment he realized the institution had no idea what they were inviting. They expected cooperation. They didn't expect revolution. Malik walked through the campus gates again a few days later. Not as a student, but as a professor. His badge read Dr. Malik Henderson, tenured professor of mathematics and educational equity. Students in the quad recognized him. Faculty whispered in passing. He established office hours with a twist, open forums where students could speak, grade review sessions, where data was transparent, monthly panels discussing bias in curriculum. Room 304 remained, but the chalkboard was repainted. The first lecture he gave wasn't on derivatives or integrals. It was on the calculus of power, the rules of equity, and the limits of silence. He didn't use his old notes. He used case studies, student testimonials, Redefine analytics. When a new freshman asked what the equity corner in the syllabus meant, Malik answered, "It means you don't just learn the subject, you learn yourself. You don't just solve for X, you identify the X you deserve." His actions roared where words once failed. Students queued for his office hours, not because they feared grades, but but because they believed in change. Alumni wrote letters. Departments asked for his guidance. The academic world shifted from behind the scenes to at his lecture.
And Kessler?
He was retired but still haunted by a legacy he couldn't defend. The anonymity of the institution couldn't shield him anymore. The system's walls had cracks, now lit by 100,000 Redefine users, and countless testimonies. Kessler's name appeared in university handbooks under ethical failures, instead of distinguished professors. The gatekeepers found themselves exposed. In the end, Malik never needed to shout. He didn't need to fight with his fists. His presence, his platform, his refusal to withdraw became the signal. He redefined what it meant to belong, to push, to pursue. And in doing so, he burned down the old classroom. Late one evening, as Malik shut down his laptop and stood in the empty lecture hall, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. New target identified: institutional endowments. They're next. He read it, stepped back. The lights above flickered. And then he smiled. Quietly, deliberately. If this story made you feel seen, don't just scroll. Amplify it. Like it. Share it. Let others know silence isn't survival. It's erasure. Subscribe for more untold truths that aren't just stories.